Okay, welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host with Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin, and really another shot heard around the world, the Supreme Court leak. Your take?
Well, I think there's a couple of takeaways that we need to look at. The first of which is the leak itself. This is unprecedented in modern history that an opinion would be leaked to the press. It is absolutely unfathomable that anybody would consider this appropriate, especially since Chief Justice Roberts has already come out and said, yes, this was an early draft of an opinion, but early drafts are not necessarily the final draft. So this may have no bearing on what the decision actually is.
And doesn't it actually even go back, excuse me, but goes back to the Supreme Court individual that died like 3 years ago? That was part of it. Why do I bring it up? Because it's
yes,
like
it mentions some of the arguments of Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
No, and the conservative.
It mentions a number of them. Okay. That's the thing, is that most people, have gone either batshit crazy against or batshit crazy for. Very few people have actually read the 98 pages. And the leak itself is bad enough. And it's very obvious this was a very liberal clerk for one of the justices who is basically trying to rally the troops because the Democrats have nothing they can run on. So this is, look over here. Oh, ignore inflation, ignore Afghanistan, ignore the southern border. This was meant for nothing else than to rally liberal troops. Now,
I think the timing of it was not fortunate for the liberal Democrats because there's way too much time till November, plenty of time for gas hikes, several Biden miscues and gaffes, and who knows what else they can screw up, right? So if it was an October surprise, dangerous.
It would have been more effective as an October surprise. The problem with making it an October surprise is that the actual decision is expected somewhere around July or August. So they can't do anything in October if the information's already out. The big thing, though, is that the mainstream media is hyping this up and completely overblowing what overturning Roe v. Wade is. Now, I'm going to go on the record. I am pro-choice. I do not want the government telling me that I can or can't do anything. So, yeah, I do not want the government stepping in and saying you cannot have an abortion. But that's not what Roe v. Wade does. If Roe v. Wade is overturned,
gives it up to the states.
It gives it to the states. Now, there's already 30 states that have said they will codify the right to have an abortion. And this is exactly what that draft opinion called for if you actually read it. So
go ahead, I'm sorry.
If your state does not have a law saying you cannot have an abortion, overturning Roe v. Wade literally has no effect because your state has not outlawed abortion, so it's still legal.
Yeah, but you're talking about people being informed, and oftentimes on the emotionally driven left, just like when Trump was first elected, they had the vagina rallies and all this stuff. They didn't even know anything about Trump. I actually asked someone, a woman, so you went to the rally, what were you protesting? And she didn't know. So it's not, you're assuming these people actually understand what you understand, and I think that is much of a bridge too far.
I'm actually assuming they don't understand it, which is why I'm explaining it.
Yeah, that is true. But
But
I think it will. I don't know. Here's a quintessential question. When when you have problems filling up your tank with gas, when there's a recession, which I do actually believe is going to happen, if you do the math, they had a 0.5 point increase in the federal funds rate, interest rate hike, which is really big and not the first and not the last, I should say. So, what are you more worried about, Roe versus Wade, or gee, can I actually feed my family?
that's exactly true. A recent poll asking Americans what was most important to them. Abortion rights was ninth. So there, the southern border inflation was number one. The economy was number two. Southern border was up there. There's eight other issues that people are worried about before they consider abortion rights. So
And
is this
plus, it's also not. Um, it's almost equally divided. So it's not something
yes.
that's like a 70-30 that Americans are 74, a pro, abort. It's like a 50-50 proposition. So it's
Well,
not.
it's not 50-50, but it's a lot more complicated than people are making it sound, because right now it's actually about 60-40 according to recent polls. People are in favor of having women have access to abortions. However, it's 80-20 according to these same polls that people are against late term abortions. So it's not a matter of having a law saying, yes, you can have an abortion or no, you can't have an abortion. People are not in favor of open ended laws that say yes or no. They want laws like the one in Missouri, which is what the case in front of the Supreme Court was about, saying you can have an abortion up to 15 weeks.
Yeah, I think that you have a very quintessential point, more than salient, and that is the whole thing that, and I think most Americans probably do believe, or the 60-70% believe in the right to choose. But
Yeah.
but everything else in liberalism, it goes a bridge too far. What in Virginia they were talking of basically killing babies, at birth.
Yeah, there have been stories about that. I don't have any actual statistics or information about those.
No, the governor of
But
Virginia was
yep,
in favor of that.
but it is amazing that once you get into the weeds and you go, this is not a black and white issue, people are not in favor of the open-endedness of it. And also, this was obviously meant to inflame people. So if you take a step back and actually look at what the law says, look at what repealing Roe v. Wade would do, constitutional attorneys who are pro choice for decades have said Roe v. Wade is a bad law, bad case law. And
No,
that,
most lawyers, yes, most
yes,
constitutionalists agree with that. Yes.
and that either Congress or the local legislatures should be passing laws stating this is what this state allows. Or in the case of Congress, this is what passes in the United States. At this point, I think the US is too divided for Congress to do anything. I think it's going to come down to the local legislatures to pass what's legal in their states. And that's where this should be decided, is the legislature. And that's actually spelled out in this leaked opinion. And as I said earlier, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who we all know was a liberal judge, had stated that during her life. So this is not a right or left issue. This is a matter of the Supreme Court needs to follow the law and not the politics. The Congress can deal with the politics of it, but the Supreme Court needs to stay above that.
I would agree with that, but the issue that I see when you look at the political landscape, it was a lifeboat for the sinking Biden administration. You can rally
Yes.
the usual suspects and then additionally others, and it was a real sinking ship with no life support. This at least invigorates them. I don't know how long, but I don't know how long it's really going to last. He did a press conference today that said he's actually reducing the deficit, and he said something like next year he'll reduce the deficit by something like 1.5 trillion, a total fabrication. So,
the deficit has skyrocketed.
And he also made the pronouncement that the Make America Great Again, the MAGA movement, is the most extreme a political ideology in American history, not the neo-Nazis, not Antifa, but MAGA. Yeah.
And that's been fact-checked and disputed already. It's simply not the truth. The whole point of this leak was to invigorate the far left to come out during the midterm elections, because they've been saying they're going to stay home because they're not happy with Biden. But it's already starting to backfire, because first of all, it's also invigorating the far right to come out and keep this happening. But more than that, it's highlighting the hypocrisy, because there's already videos all over the internet where people are going out and interviewing pro-choice women at these protests. And they're all saying, the message is, men should not be passing laws about their body. And they're being asked the question, well, then what's a woman? And they're like, well, does a trans woman count?
Oh, no, so the other thing I'm thinking, doesn't that blow up the whole shifting, sexual identification? I mean, why can't I have an abortion? If I feel like a woman, I mean, I want my rights too, because I can have an abortion. I mean, Mayor Pete took, maternity leave for 2 months or 3 months in the middle of the supply chain crisis. I mean, couldn't he have an abortion?
Right.
So it's not just women that are being affected. It's men who identify as women. I mean, wink and a nod. Yeah.
All right. And that's coming back to bite them. And of course, the argument that always gets put down by the far left is, well, it's the woman's body, except the concept of an abortion actually affects 3 people. It's the woman, it's the man whose child that is, and it's the child. So it's a bigger issue than they want to make it, because they want the simple slogan, and it's not that simple an issue. And the fact of the matter is, I think if they actually argued on the complexity, they would have a more compelling argument for keeping abortions legal. I mean, I go back to Bill Clinton's statement where he said abortions should be safe, legal, and rare.
Yes, well, that train left the station 20 years ago. Yeah. I guess the biggest takeaway, I think, given the timing, I think it's a tempest in the teapot until the actual decision is outlined. I also think, as we talked about, in terms of the divisions between late term and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know how impactful it's going to be. But my other last takeaway, and I love your comment, is it still might have another unintended consequence, and that's when the nutcases go out there and protest. People in their living room who have had enough of this shit for the last 2 years are going to say, oh, God, more shit, craziness. So what do you think of that?
Well, we're already seeing that. Just yesterday, pro-choice protesters attacked a police officer